विग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौली स्फुरत् तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमां मीनवक्षोरुहाम् पाणिभ्यामलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम् सततज्वर विषमज्वर ग्रह नक्षत्र दोषाञ्चान्या हर हर काली सर सर गौरी गम गम विद्ये आले माले काले बन्धे भज भज विद्ये मख मख विद्ये नाशय नाशय पापम् हर हर दुःस्वप्नम् विध्वंसय विध्वंसय
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Namaste, dear friends, and a very, very warm welcome to you from whichever part of the world you may be. I hope you've been following us on the previous sessions that we've had on this 18th day of the Global Festival of Yoga, celebrating wellness. In the morning, we had a beautiful session on yoga, a practice to discover one's unity, or a practice to discover unity. In the afternoon, we had another session by Soumya Ayarji on giving wellness to the world's vulnerable through yoga. The theme of the day has been unity, and more specifically also human unity. There is a very beautiful saying in Sanskrit, which is Ayam nijah paro veti ganana laghu chetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam, which means that this is mine, this is another's. This is the thinking of those with a small mind. For the one with a generous heart, the entire world or the whole earth is a family. So, dear friends, we have a very special dialogue before us this evening on trying to discover the relationship of yoga and how it promotes our unity, human unity, unity with creatures around us, unity in everything that exists, which is the foundational source of the very philosophy of yoga. So, with these words, I would like to invite Hannah to please come on screen. Hannah?
Namaskar. Can you hear me?
Yes, namaste.
Namaskar, namaste everyone, and greetings from New York City. My name is Hannah, and I work for the Global Peace Initiative of Women. We are really excited about this event today, and we are so happy to be partnering with our friends at Indica Yoga for this global festival of yoga celebrating wellness. Today's event is on yoga and human unity, as Anuradha just discussed. And this is such an important topic to be exploring. As we know, over recent years, yoga has become very, very popular, not just in India, but globally. It's really become super popular and practiced, but mostly it's yoga asana. But what about yoga? What is the essence or the root of yoga? And the root of yoga is unity. And today I'm super excited for us to be exploring this topic. We have several amazing panelists joining us today. We have Juan Pablo Restrepo from Argentina, Professor Suhail Umar from Pakistan, Father Michael Halloran from New York City, and Swamini Pramananda from India. And this session will also be moderated by our good friend, Reverend Diane Berke. She is the founder and spiritual director of One Spirit Learning Alliance, which is an interspiritual educational organization which trains interspiritual ministers, spiritual counselors, and leaders. She is a core team member of Transformation 365, an online resource to help people develop or deepen their contemplative practice. And she's also just an amazing soul and human being. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the virtual mic over to Diane to kick off the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you to our friends at Indica Yoga. As Hannah just said, yoga has become increasingly popular across the globe as a way of serving to unite people to their own higher selves, to the source of being, and to each other. The word yoga literally means to unite, and it is abundantly clear that the unity of the human family, the unity of the entirety of creation, is needed now more than ever for the very survival, let alone the flourishing of the global community. In our discussion today, we will be exploring how yoga in its deepest unity is expressed through a variety of spiritual traditions, and how these teachings can be applied to support a deeper and more profound awakening and healing of the global family of all living beings. My own practice for the past 30 years has been a spiritual path called A Course in Miracles, which is a non-dual path designed to help us awaken from the thought system of separation to the peace and unity of our true nature as one with our source, with ourselves, and with the entirety of creation. It is my privilege and honor to moderate this discussion, and I would like to introduce you to our panelists as I invite them to share their wisdom with you. First, I'd like to invite Swamini Pramananda, affectionately known as Amaji. Amaji is the spiritual leader and visionary behind the organization Purna Vidya, based in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. While still a teenager, Amaji lived in a traditional Gurukulam and studied Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual teaching of India, for 3 years with her first teacher, Swami Dayananda Saraswati. As a result of this intense study, Amaji became a monk and spiritual teacher herself, and for the past 30 years has been sharing the vision of oneness and harmony with seekers around the world. While few teachers capable of sharing this knowledge remain today, those who do often live in remote areas or lack facility with English. Swamini is one of those rare teachers who understands the intensity and challenges of the spiritual journey and can communicate these ancient teachings in a way that is both meaningful and relevant for the modern spiritual seeker. So please welcome Swamini Pramananda Amaji.
Swamini, may I please request you, Amaji, would you kindly come on screen and share your thoughts? I think we have lost Amaji for some reason. I think there must have been a problem at her end, a technical problem. May I request Reverend Diane Berke to please invite the next speaker, and we can come back to Swaminiji when she's around.
Yes, thank you. We are going to instead hear at this point from Juan Pablo Restrepo, who is an Acro Yoga teacher located in Argentina. And in his bio, Juan Pablo writes, since 2006, through many years of practicing and teaching Acro Yoga, so many doors have opened and I have walked so many paths. I've met so many people and shared so many experiences. Living this nomadic life and trying to refine my motivation on each step. Currently, I live in Argentina and try to bring this practice closer to different people. I try to see how this practice makes us live in close connection to each other. Our community is flourishing slowly and growing, and our challenges appear to be great opportunities to develop a stronger commitment to my motivation. To make others part of my practice, to put myself in others' place, to care a little bit more for others, to create a community that supports one another. This is what I would like to manifest. So please welcome Juan Pablo.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me well? I'm also having a little bit of technical problems here in Patagonia. So I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes,
Diane?
we can hear you. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so it's okay. So thank you so much for this invitation. I want to thank especially to Indica and GPIW. And we know we are in a very difficult time, a time of massive destruction in many ways. I will call it a socio-ecological catastrophe. It's not just ecological, it's social also. Some theorists have called this age the Anthropocene, the age of man, when the force of the human activities have become as powerful as the very geological processes, as the movement of the tectonic plates. Of course, the result of this new age, of the event we call the Anthropocene, was not due to all humanity, but a particular configuration of men. Who is this man that we call the anthropos? Who is this anthropos? How does this man understands and relates the world? I quote here the Yanomami shaman Daviko Penawa. He's from the Amazon jungle. And he has a very direct and powerful description of this kind of configuration of men. It's the man of merchandise, he says, by whom everything must be subsumed by profit. Trees, animals, and people become in the mind and the practices of these men just assets. We must start to imagine a different kind of relation to the world and ourselves. We must start to conceive a way out of the spell that convert everything into assets. We need to engage in imaginations and practices that renew our relationship with the earth. Yoga can help in imagining a new relationship with the world, but I don't believe, and this is the point I want to make, I don't believe that yoga or any spiritual tradition is the only solution for all the problems that we have. They can help, of course, but they are not what we call here a panacea, everything that, something that is gonna solve everything. I will propose very shortly some topics that I find essential to find a better relation and where the different practices of yoga and spirituality could help to promote a more dignified and respectful humanity. I start with the first point. First of all, yoga is an invitation to practice ahimsa, non-violence. We can interpret the meaning of ahimsa as having a relationship of care with everything that surrounds us. Care, for me in these times, is a great word. It's the opposite of neglect. We neglect when we don't care, when we just pass by. Care implies attention as much as curiosity and compassion. But to care means find in your world meaningful relationships. And I here throw a question: how does our economic and political system can bring to death so many forests in the world? How there is so many people starving to death in the world because they really don't care about forest or about starving people. The people of the merchandise just seek profit. In this direction, I think we must also look or revise at the dualist versions of spirituality from East and also from West, where this world is just a shameful version of a highest reality. We must have a critical eye with our own traditions and practices. I don't consider the devaluation of our material world an option to heal ourselves. Maybe to escape, but not to heal. I think we must connect with an animist and immanent spirituality, but this is something I will not speak at the moment. So this was my first point. Second, in order to find unity, we must not neglect the value of difference. I bring this idea from my own experience as a yoga teacher, where I emphasize relationships more than individuality. This is something we call interpersonal yoga, or something that I used to teach acro yoga, but now I'm calling interpersonal yoga. I must clarify that this is not a brand or a mark of yoga, but an imaginative exercise to bring the value of difference and relationships to yoga. I consider it very important not to rush in the quest for unity, but to slow down and appreciate difference. And how do we do it? Remembering that the other is beyond my grasp, that the other escapes all my conceptual ideas. In the words of philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, the other is mystery, is infinity. Just from this point, it's legitimate to think and find ways of connection. So first, I think we need to explore our own limitations, our own limits, and then we can envisage to expand our frontiers. This idea is reflected in the old saying of the Zen master Dogen. He says, meditation is to study the self. So first, we study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by the myriad things. He says that in a book called Shogenso, in the Genjo Koan. I also like the idea of the Spanda tradition of Kashmir Shaivism. This comes to my mind. They say something like, there is no unity without pulsation. There is no expansion without contraction, this movement of consciousness. Once we recognize the incommensurability of whoever is in front of ourselves, there should be a movement of expansion, a search to find a common ground. We should look for connection once we recognize the inescapable difference that marks my relationship or our relationships with the other. I want to finish with a final remark. In Cali, the place where I was born from, in Colombia, I was born in Colombia. I live now in Argentina, but I was born in Colombia. There are certain neighborhoods where there exist what are called invisible frontiers, invisible borders. There are many stories from people crossing those borders and getting killed. Not just Colombia, but the whole place we call the Americas was marked by a genocide committed in the name of an idea of civilization and humanity that discriminated as wild and savage the originary inhabitants. It is not so different from what is happening today with all immigrants coming from the global south to the global north. We're still engaged in diverse narratives and practices that create walls and borders of hate between us. So I think more than the idea of just unity, I would like to contemplate the idea of us in relation and entanglement with others, humans, as well as more than humans. We must pierce those walls and frontiers and make ourselves porous, but we must do it with careful attention to the face of whomever we encounter in our path. Thank you very much. So I will mute myself now.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo, for wonderful, wonderful reflections. I'm struck by what you said at the end about us, and certainly in human development, the natural movement toward maturity is being able to move from an identification simply with me to an identification with us, to an identification with all of us, which includes not only the whole human family, but as you said, the whole living creation as well. I believe that Amaji is back with us. And so Amaji, if you could unmute yourself and share your reflections with us.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. I'm back with divine grace, I would say. Being in a remote area here, namaskaram to everybody. And this theme of yoga and human unity is, I look upon yoga as the Indian tradition talks about it, a journey to connecting with the divine. Yoga is one's connection to the divine, to one's higher self. And this connection to the divinity, if one were to ask how it expresses in one's life, it expresses in harmony. Harmony means finding peace, tranquility, balance, comfort. And so yoga is really about harmony with oneself, within oneself. It is harmony with the world around. It is harmony with other life forms, harmony with nature, and harmony with the divine. And so one who achieves this harmony is called a yogi, really. In modern times, I find this expression, I'm a yogi or I'm a yogini, is a very popular expression. But really speaking, if you ask the tradition would say a yogi or a yogini, a female yogi is one who has attained harmony within and around. And in this world of, if you look at modern humanity, humanity is anything but harmonious today. In our world of competition, we are so committed to converting everything into competition, including a time like this, which is a time of crisis, the pandemic crisis. Countries are looking to see who's going to make the first vaccine and how we are going to grab and hold it for a supply for 3 months. And so making anything competitive has become the mindset of humanity today. And somehow we have come to believe that for me to be successful, I need to outdo the other. And that means I must fail the other. And this failing the other for me to be successful, what kind of success is that? Can I really be successful or happy if those around me are unhappy? Can in family, one person be happy if the rest are unhappy? It's not possible. In Africa, there is a custom where, when they teach children about non-competitive life, it's like putting number of balloons in one room and telling the children, those who get to that balloon, those who run fast and get to that balloon will get all of it. And you know what these children do? They hold hands with each other. If there are 10 of them, all 10 will hold hands and they will run together towards that room, because the fun, the success, the winning is for all 10. And so the happiness is for all when we can share with all around us. And this is a very big lesson time has come for humanity to learn. Unless there is sharing, there can be no happiness. In competition, we try to subjugate. Even nature we have tried to subjugate. We have tried to compete with nature and show her that we are above her. Otherwise, what right do we have to destroy nature? But we do, because we believe we are in control of things. And there is only so far we can go, because nature does not allow even animals to simply hurt another life unless there is a good reason. Here we are hurting each other just to win, just to get ahead of a race which we have created for ourselves. And in this harmony, there can only be hurt. And so it is important when nature today has begun to speak to us, by literally bringing humanity down to its knees, making us understand what we are doing Many people are out of jobs. Many companies are shut down. Interestingly, the companies that cater to the luxury items like watches and travel and tourism are the ones that are hit first, is it not? There is a very big message in this. And the message is that we have paid too much attention to luxuries and we have lost focus on the necessities of life. We look at necessities, and the best part, the things that we want most are free in this world, like love, like harmony, like share, like care, and yoga. Yoga is the fastest growing community in this world today, and that's because you a great avenue, a real opening for harmonizing your life within and around you. And so it gives you a very good reason. It tells you there is no reason to compete. There is only a composure that one needs to discover within, an innate composure. If you are not at peace, you cannot be a source of peace for others. If you are not in an inner harmony, then you cannot bring harmony to others. And therefore, yoga is a journey. In a spiritual Vedic civilization, like the Indian civilization, it is very clearly told in the Upanishads that the ultimate goal of every human life is awakening to one's highest nature. And if one did not use one's life, if one did not make choices in one's life to achieve this highest nature, then one has left this world, and one dies, then you have left your world as a miser. Miser because all the faculty, all that self-awareness which was provided to the human being as a privileged life form, and the faculty to choose was given to us. We did not make right choices if we did not choose awakening to our highest nature. And so the Upanishads, the Veda, calls us a miser for having not used our faculty of choosing appropriately. And therefore, yoga guides us. Yoga provides us this, gives us a guidance to this ultimate goal of life. And the immediate goal of life, it also presents tools of how to keep a mind which is available to hold this highest knowledge, for which we need to choose a life of self-purification, of healing, of growth. And so attitudes and practices are the focus of yoga to bring one's mind to a calm space. And therefore, yoga means not only yujir yoge, it means not only joining with the highest or awakening to the highest self, but yoga also means that very destination or samadhi. Two meanings are there for this word, and one refers to the ultimate goal, and the other refers to the temporary goal, the immediate goal of life. The immediate goal, gaining clarity of mind. A clarity which is required for right thinking, right attitude. And so practices for these right attitudes are talked about. Asana, pranayama, meditation. These three are very important practices. The discipline of of your posture, handling one's body, understanding one's body, understanding one's breath, so that with the help of breath, I can connect the mind to the higher nature of mind, and then being able to move into that higher space through meditation are three important practices of yoga. And when it comes to attitudes, which the yoga provides as immediate goal, in these attitudes, I would highlight three important attitudes that yoga highlights. It's called Kriya Yoga or Tapas Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhanam. Three. The first is tapas or penance, cleansing, removing impurities, impurities that relate to smallness in thinking, like was beautifully said in the opening remarks, mine, yours, this divide itself creates separation and constriction of the soul. And so tapas is the capacity, the discipline to release oneself from these impurities. Swadhyaya, the second attitude, is a reverence for one's learning, a regular learning, scriptural learning where one is always guided towards the higher altar and doing the necessary disciplines required for that. And number three is surrender to the divine, learning to let go. Instead of holding the reins and trying to control the world, learning to let go and becoming a child of the universe again is the message towards harmony, is a message towards awakening to the highest self. And this is what yoga, a great gift to humanity. It is a gift that the spiritual tradition of India has held very dearly in its soul, in its consciousness. And it is a gift that all humanity in its own cultural ways have used in their own ways, their own systems to rise to the highest self. And that is really where today humanity is headed at. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about yoga and human unity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amaji. The second of the qualities that Amaji just spoke about was a dedication to learning. And our next presenter, I think, is such a powerful embodiment of that. Professor Suhail Umar, who is a professor of social sciences at the University of Punjab. Professor Umar received his classical education at Central Modal School in Lahore, Foreman Christian College in Lahore, Government College in Lahore. He has received a bachelor's in English and philosophy at Government College, a master's in English, and also has acquired Arabic, Persian, and traditional Islamic sciences, Arabic, Persian, Tajweed, and Hifiz. His further studies included a Master's of Philosophy in Iqbal Studies and a PhD, ABD, with the subject matter of Ibn Arabi and Iqbal, a comparative study of key philosophical concepts. Professor Umar is the founder and editor of Riwayat Intellectual Journal in the Urdu language, the editor of Iqbal Review, quarterly journal which is published alternately in Urdu and English, with occasional issues in Persian, Arabic, and Turkish, devoted to the study of the works and teachings of Iqbal, as well as to Islamic studies, comparative religion, philosophy, literature, history, arts, and sociology. Well-versed in Urdu, English, Arabic, and Persian, Professor Umar has contributed a number of articles on Islamic and literary themes to the reputed academic journals, apart from publishing works in English, Urdu, and Persian on Iqbal, Islamic studies, literature, and Sufism. His area of expertise is Iqbal's life and thought, Islamic mysticism, medieval Muslim intellectual history, as well as religion and science. Please welcome Professor Suhail Umar.
Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Pranam, salam, greetings to everybody. I'm really delighted and grateful to have been invited to this very important forum to talk about a more important subject which has always been very close to my heart. But I would, before I say anything on the subject, that is yoga and human unity, let me, by way of forestalling some misgivings or clearing the way, let me say that I'm sure that our viewers, a lot of them, there would be a rising curiosity in them that what is this person, a Muslim, a mystic, a Sufi, a practicing Muslim, a philosopher, a social scientist, what is he doing here at a forum of yoga? Is he a secret MRB practitioner? MRB means multiple religious belongings, which is a very new discipline, you know. Or he is fond of syncretism, just go on window shopping from different houses of spirituality and joining them. Or a perennialist like Aldous Huxley or his ilk that had spawned all this yoga business all over America over the last century. Or he's a universalist. So to dispel these things, I am a Muslim universalist. That is, inclusivist Muslim whose inclusivism includes exclusivism as well, because every tradition has exclusivists, and the inclusivist and exclusivist and the inclusivist has to deal with them as well. So my inclusivism even includes my exclusivist co-religionists. Now, so why about yoga? My Islamic perspective, or the combination of the perspectives that I have just described. I forgot to say that I am also not anywhere near a new age kind of a freak. I have no interest in those things. Then and I am also not interested in yoga, in anything that is being sold in the name of yoga for so many years all over the world now, especially in North America. And my first perspective, I would just like to describe it in a hierarchical manner. That firstly, I accept and look at yoga as one of the finest systems of physical fitness ever given to humanity. And one wonders always that how come that the rishis living 2,500 years ago could devise such a system of 13 asanas that worked on the endocrine system of the human body that was not even recognized, not recognized even in America up till 1995. And the first endocrine clinic was opened in America in 1995. So it was sheer inspiration, divine inspiration. It was kind of a smriti which gave these asanas to those rishis. And I'm practicing in that respect. I'm a practitioner as well, though I have not been able to master all the 13 asanas. Why is I say 13? Because I do not believe in all this business of multiplying the asanas into 55 or 155. That's rubbish. The traditional, conventional, genuine yoga had only 13. And you can add one or two by dividing halasana in 3 parts. That's a different thing. But 55 asanas or 155 asanas, that's just business. So I could only master 8, which I still practice. And this reminds me of René Guénon, the French metaphysician who introduced the Hindu metaphysical doctrines to the West for the first time in late 19th century and early 20th century. And when his books appeared in French for the first time, André Gide, the famous writer, intellectual, after having read the books of René Guénon on Hindu metaphysics or Hindu doctrines in all their aspects, he remarked that what René Guénon says is correct. But as my old body cannot take the asanas of yoga anymore, so my old head cannot take these metaphysical doctrines as well. Now, enough anecdotes. What about yoga and its higher significance? There is a saying of the Saint people of Kalahari. They say that hunger is of 2 types. There is little hunger and there is big hunger. Little hunger is of the stomach, of the appetites, gratification. But the big hunger is for quest for meaning. And it lies deeper than the little hunger. It's in our marrows of our bones. See? Meaning. Meaning of what? What does it mean to be human? And how I am connected to my environment. I am connected to the divine. What is, you use the word higher self and lower self. What is this lower self, higher self? What is the meaning of life? Why am I here? Where I am going? So this quest for deeper meaning, yoga responds to that. And this is a shared human aspiration. So here comes the first inkling of human unity and yoga. Thirdly, all spirituality if we would like to summarize it, all spirituality is discernment between the real and the illusory, and concentration on the real. When I say discernment between the real and the illusory, I have in mind what the first Adhyay of the Bhagavad Gita tells us. That is, he is teaching us, to Arjun, that look at the individual soul, the supreme soul, Paramatma, Jivatma, their connection. And in Islamic terms, I have so many things to say, but no need to, because my audience would not need it. So when I say discernment between the real and the illusory, it's exactly in the meaning of the first Adhyay of the Bhagavad Gita. And the second part is concentration on the real. Again, in the sense in which the second Adhyay of the Bhagavad Gita tells us that there are two paths to tread, two highways to take. And this is according to the capacity, to the varan, to genetic, what you have inherited, to the human types. You know the Sanskrit words. To adopt one of these. And one is sannyas and other is yoga. Concentration on the real. And if you look back on the root meaning of the word religion, which comes from the Latin religio, that is, legio is ligament and religio, binding, that which binds again. That which binds again the humans to the divine, both on the three levels of their existence: their understanding and comprehension, their action, their motivation and intention. So religio, religion itself is, and yoga is the practical aspect of that religio. And I've just mentioned religio and its Latin root. Same is with the yoga. Yoga comes from yoke of English comes from Latin, and it is same as yoga. I never pronounce yoga. I never pronounce Buddha. I never pronounce Rama. I never pronounce Krishna, because that is deficiency of English phonetics, not of Sanskrit, not of Urdu, because they don't have that resounding guttural ah. Therefore, it's become yoga. Otherwise, you all know it's yoga. Now, an important thing, how this, so the aim of yoga with reference to the Bhagavad Gita and what I just described, summarized as the two core principles of all spirituality: discernment between the real and the illusory, and concentration on the real. It is usually, when we are talking in Oriental terms or in Hindu idiom, that this is the aim of yoga is deliverance. Deliverance from both of these aspects, the practical and the intellectual. Deliverance. Deliverance from ignorance and deliverance from error. But I would also like to make a clarification here that deliverance is not used in any way as an equivalent of salvation, which all the time Orientalists do. In all their books, mukti and moksha is translated as salvation. That's a typical Christian theological concept which should not be brought in while discussing Hindu metaphysics and eschatology or spiritual practices. So anyway, deliverance can be obtained by the yogi with the help of the observances indicated in the Yoga Shastra of Patanjali. It can also be cultivated and obtained by the practice of certain rites. And here I would like to indicate or towards a certain parallel, which are almost parallel between Islam and yoga, or Islam and Hinduism. That when we say that deliverance could be obtained with the help of observances indicated in the Yoga Shastra, it can also be obtained by the practice of certain rites, as we have the rite of zikr, invocation. And this brings to mind Shankaracharya, who while giving the instruction had summarized it in 2 parts. Still your mind and keep perseveringly repeating the sacred name of Om. Similarly, in Islam, still your mind and keep focused, persevering, concentrated attention on the divine name Hu, because Hu is an abbreviation of Allah, the last Ha of it. So this is a certain rites which are parallel, and there could be, and this is summarized under the general title of zikr, of invocation, of remembrance of the divine. But above all, it also could be attained, the objective of yoga, through various particular styles of meditation, Harda Vidya, or which the Chandogya Upanishad calls Dahara Vidya. So some people who do not perform the rites and take the other path, and even still, if they can reach their destination, sometimes more easily and rapidly. How? By maintaining their attention perpetually concentrated and fixed on the supreme principle, Brahma, Allah, and whatever one reality named by different descriptions. Because in this supreme principle, and when I'm talking, I never agreed with Anuradha ji to follow the Orientalistic suggestion that to distinguish between Brahma Saguna and Brahma Nirguna, one should call Brahman. This is unacceptable according to my readings and what Renegano has always indicated, that Brahma and Brahm are already different in Sanskrit. They are pronounced differently. One is neuter and one is not. So it's enough to say the supreme Brahma, the supreme principle, in which consists the one and only really dispensable preparation, and one with concentrated and fixed attention on the supreme name, the supreme principle. As Shankar had said, one can acquire that true knowledge of the supreme principle, Brahm Vidya, which is also called the supreme knowledge. Now with this, who has attained the perfection of divine knowledge, Brahm Vidya, and who has consequently obtained final deliverance, ascends on quitting its bodily form and without passing through any intermediate stages to the supreme spiritual light, which is Brahma, which is Allah. Another name for God is Noor in Islamic terminology. Noorun ala Noor, light upon light, light which is Brahma, and identifies itself with it in an undivided and comfortable manner, just as pure water mingling itself with a clear lake without, however, losing itself in it in any way, conforms itself in every respect therewith. And I end this with Meister Eckhart, who has described this supreme state as fusion without confusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those very thought-provoking and essential teachings. Finally, we'll hear from Father Michael Halloran, who is a Roman Catholic priest and sensei. Father Michael was raised Roman Catholic and joined the Jesuits at the age of 18. After 5 years, he joined the Contemplative Hermit Order of Carthusians, where he remained for 22 years in the United States, France, and England. Since 1994, he has worked as a parish priest in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York. Father Michael has studied erratic yoga for 8 years and also became a sensei in the White Plum Asanga of the Zen tradition through his mentor, Father Robert Jinsen Kennedy, S.J. Roshi. As a priest of the Archdiocese, Michael works at the parish of Notre Dame near Columbia University in Manhattan. Please welcome Father Michael Halloran.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very pleased and honored to be able to speak with you today. I'm going to speak from the various traditions to show, hopefully, how they all work towards unity and can help one another work towards unity. When I was on a trip to Japan with GPIW a few years ago, I was addressing a group of Japanese Buddhists about contemplation, Christian contemplation and meditation. And they were surprised that there was such a thing. But I assure you that that Christian contemplative mysticism is very much a reality and is the way that we can really discover each other, that is to say, on the contemplative level and meditation level. As Professor Umar said, you know, the yoga and yoke are related etymologically. A yoke can be a burden, and seeking unity can be a burden, but also a great pleasure and a great privilege and a great challenge. And it's a yoke in the sense of you're joining two oxen, or you're joining anything, bringing together. So that's why it's a joining and a bringing together. Jesus himself, you know, early centuries got involved in a lot of conflict and debate about, you know, how he was God, whether he was God, how it all worked, and in issues of salvation, redemption, etc. But as many contemporary authors, Christian authors, are pointing out, Jesus was primarily a wisdom teacher. That is to say, teaching wisdom, the way of wisdom, which is precisely the way of unity and connection with the divine and with one another. His famous yoke speech, very beautiful. Come to me, all you who labor, I will refresh you. Learn from me, I'm meek and humble of heart. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You could almost say, take my yoga upon you, for my yoga is easy and my burden is light. So what is this yoga? Well, he presents himself in many parables as the bridegroom. So that idea of unity between himself and the world, between him and us. He speaks of abiding in him as he in us. the very famous phrase about him and the absolute, him and the Father. He says, the Father and I are one. And then perhaps the most beautiful passage in which all of these aspects come together is at the very end of what's called his Last Supper discourse, his high priestly prayer at the very end of the Last Supper in John's Gospel, where he says, I pray that all may be one, as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may be in us. And another line a few minutes later, he says, that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me, that they may be made perfectly one. So our union with one another, our union with Christ, Christ's union with the Father, our union with the Father, all together. That's his ultimate prayer. And he makes it a reality. He speaks elsewhere of the image of I'm the vine, you are the branches. So it's one reality, one tree, one cosmic tree, if you will, of he and us. And of the branches, of course, we are all related because we're part of the same tree. St. Paul, the great apostle of the Gentiles in the first decades of Christianity, speaks about the one body of Christ. We're all in Christ, and that we all form one body with him. Therefore, we're all members of one another. If on our planet today we remembered that we are all members of one another in one body, as St. Paul says, if one member suffers, all the members suffer. As you know from your own body, if one part of your body is sick, you feel sick, the entire body, or if one member rejoices, they all rejoice, as St. Paul says. We need that consciousness that we're not separate selves. We're not separate from the absolute. We're not separate from one another. So that if one member anywhere in the world is suffering, we are suffering. Christ is suffering all over again. It's all one reality. Paul says elsewhere to the Ephesians that Christ breaks down the dividing walls of hostility and makes them all one new person. He's speaking about Jew and Gentile, but it can be any groups that are in conflict with each other all throughout history, that we all become one in that deepest reality. So Christianity is about yoga in that sense. Christianity is about unity and bringing us all together, religion, as Professor Umar said, bringing us all together, joining us all together with the absolute and with one another, the absolute whom Jesus called Father. I like to say too, I'm also a Zen sensei. In Mahayana Buddhism, particularly in Zen, it's precisely about waking up. That's what Buddha means. You wake up, you realize through meditation, through enlightenment, that you are one with the absolute and one with one another. The same journey is traveled. So, for example, in the Heart Sutra, it says, emptiness is exactly form, and form is exactly emptiness. A Christian doctrine of incarnation couldn't have put it better. Emptiness is form is emptiness, meaning absolute and relative and absolute are always absolutely together. So you can point to anything or anyone, and right there in there is the absolute. So everything and everyone is one with the absolute. We just have to wake up to it. The two fit together, the identity of relative and absolute. That's the Sandokai, another sutra. It says they fit together, they're absolute and relative, like a box and its lid, or two arrows meeting in midair, that you can't separate them out. I appreciate it very much that Juan Pablo quoted Dogen in his remarks a few minutes ago, quoting Dogen, where he said, to study the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be united to the 10,000 things, the myriad things. So when you forget your isolated, egotistical, self-centered self, you discover you're one with the 10,000 things. You're one with reality, certainly one with one another, as modern science teaches us as well. That we're all connected energetically, that we're all connected genetically, that we're all one, and we need to live as one. And the Buddha himself, in his enlightenment experience, as recounted in the literature, in the scriptures, as the morning star rose after that long night of purification and then finally enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he realized and it wasn't the ego speaking anymore. I and all the great earth and all things simultaneously achieved the way. So he woke up to his communion, if you will, with everyone and everything. You know, my teacher, Roshi Kennedy, the Jesuit, often says, you know, Zen is not Buddhist. And he didn't mean to dishonor the wonderful Buddhist tradition from which Zen emanates, but he was saying it's really just the reality. We're supposed to just wake up to what's real. Just when you wake up to reality, which is beyond cult and beyond religion and beyond, you know, in the isolated sense. So it's just waking up to what's real, and that's not against anything. That's not a particular cult or one particular view. It's just reality, to wake up to reality. And I'd like to conclude, especially, and I did study yoga with a master here in the U.S., a Filipino Chinese extraction master who taught Kundalini yoga and other types of Raja yoga, as well as pranic healing. And I didn't become a teacher in that, but I realized with the chakra system and Kundalini yoga and all of that, that's just natural too. It's natural wisdom. It's a science. It's what is. So if you study yoga or you practice these meditations, you know, it's compatible with any tradition because it's just what's real. It's just normal. It's just what's natural. It's just what's true. So all of these can be embraced, you know, whatever your tradition, I've discovered, and they can work together to unity. And they all do have as their essential premise and essential goal, unity, union with the absolute, and therefore, and at the same time, union with one another always. And that's what our planet needs. So the interesting thing is that the reason the religions can come together and talk to each other and share experience and seek unity is because they all seek unity. That's their essence. So how are they in conflict if they're all seeking unity? We can learn from one another, be enlightened by one another, help one another, welcome one another, and work together for the unity of our planet, which so desperately needs in these times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Michael. We have a few questions in our Q&A box. They are fairly specific to some of the panelists. So before we go to those, I'd like to just take a couple of moments to maybe summarize and share some of the points that stood out for me as I listened to each of our panelists today, and all of their sharings were so rich and offered so much. So what I'm going to be pulling out is very simply the things that really jumped out at me. In Juan Pablo's presentation, his beginning point was that really as humanity, we are facing a socio-ecological crisis. Amaji referred to that as we really are being brought to our knees by what's going on. And one of the things Juan Pablo mentioned is that in his work, he has been focusing on what he calls interpersonal yoga, that it's important for us to focus on our relationships, and particularly to be able to slow down enough to recognize and appreciate our differences, and to be able to approach the other as mystery, which I think is a beautiful quality of reverence that we can bring to the divine in one another. Amaji spoke about that yoga expresses itself in the quality of harmony within ourselves, with other life forms, with nature, with the world around us. And that unfortunately today in our world, our mindset is one of competition rather than harmony, and that it simply is not possible to attain happiness in this way. That unless we learn to share, recognizing our interrelatedness with one another, there can be no real happiness. And we have focused too much on luxuries and forgotten necessities such as love. Professor Umar articulated what he described as the two core principles that characterize all spirituality. First, the discernment between the real and the illusory, and second, the concentration on the real. And that today, what begins the point of unity among all religions is that they all ask the questions and aspire to what he called the big hunger, the quest for meaning. What does it really mean to be human? Why am I here? And where am I going? And finally, Father Michael, in talking about what he said could be called Jesus's yoga, that the ultimate prayer is, I pray that all may be one, all may be perfectly one, and the recognition that if one part of the body suffers, all suffer. So thank you so much for all of those sharings. And now, Hannah, would you like to take a few of the questions?
Thank you, Diane. Yes, so we will have a brief Q&A now for the last few minutes of our call. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to just type them in the Q&A box below. And if they're for any specific panelist, then please specify who exactly you would like to pose the question to. The first question is from Somya, and it's for Father Michael. Somya says, Father Michael, I'm an alumni of Santa Clara University, and I see they are now offering Ignatian Yoga / St. Ignatius. Can you enlighten us more about St. Ignatius and how his life and service would be connected to yoga?
Certainly. I also just responded to her in the chat section on this question, but I'm happy to do it for everyone here now, orally. Studying Arhatic yoga, by the way, that was the version that I studied. But I was a Jesuit also, as was said, for 5 years. That's my original spirituality. So it would be, I think, especially there's its famous Jesuit maxim and exhortation to everyone, not just Jesuits, to find God in all things, to see God in all things. In other words, seeing the absolute and the relative. That God really is present in all things. That's basic medieval theology to begin with, but this is about spiritual practice. And so to be really awake, really present, really responsive, that's what Jesuits are supposed to do, what we're all supposed to do in our daily lives, in our daily interactions, be really responsive to the depths and the reality of what's before us in a person or an event, etc. Finding God in all things. So that's seeing the connection between God and whatever is happening to us, whoever we're speaking with, seeing God in ourselves, and then responding accordingly, seeing the furthering that connection and nurturing that connection. That would be the way Jesuit spirituality, I think, would specifically and especially connect to yoga, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So we have a few more questions here. One of the questions is from Veronica, and the question is for Professor Suhail. And I actually had this question too. She wanted to know if you could name the asanas, the 13 original or key asanas, and also if you could mention where these are from, if they're like, which lineage these come from. That would be great. Thank you.
Yes, of course. I didn't have the idea that I should keep my manual handy, but I can, from my memory, I think I can give you these 13. By my regimen, it starts, first the question of lineage. The lineage I follow is through Sundar Lal from I think it was in Banaras, the first yoga ashram established, and the book, which is the first, is what has turned into sun salutation now. It's the Bhujangasana, the cobra pose. The second is the bow pose, where you lie and hold your toes and swing like a bow. Third is, I keep forgetting the Hindi names. Third is where you again lie down as in the cobra pose, but instead of raising your head, you raise your feet and up to your chest.
I think it's Salambasana, locust pose.
What?
Salambasana.
Salambasana, yes, exactly. Third, then fourth is which handstand, when you raise all your body and make a chin lock and body in the air and just the neck flat, neck and head flat, and a chin lock. This is the most important one because it affects the thyroid, the king of glands, the king of the ruling gland of the endocrine system. Fourth. Then it's just to give its cramping effects a relaxation, exactly the reverse. When you make a lotus position and then turn back, and only your head and end of your back is touching the ground. 5, then it's Sarashasana. 6, topsy-turvy pose, as they say. Then it's Halasana. And Halasana has 3 stages. That's what I said, that you can further divide one asana into 3, and that could increase the total number to say 20, but not beyond that. So Halasana, 7th. 8th is posterior pose, peacock pose. When you put one of your feet on right foot on the left side, peacock pose. And after Halasana, there is another one. Halasana has 3 stages, and then Halasana after that is 8. Halasana. Yes. Then there are 2 after peacock pose, which have to do with Uddiyana and Nauli, which have to do the inner organs of your belly. Uddiyana and Nauli, that's the most difficult, but they are all available on the net. If you just click Uddiyana, you would see excellent demonstrations of how to do these. That takes us up to 11, and then Yoga Mudra, that is death pose, which comes at the end when you your body is stilled like a corpse, and everything is concentrated on the top from where the prans leave the body. And I'm missing out one, which I can't remember. Forgive me for that.
That's okay. It seems like you have a lot memorized already, and the asanas you mentioned are some of my favorites to practice, so I think it makes sense. Why? Because they're some of the most legitimate asanas. That's great. So we have time for just a couple more questions. I know some of you asked questions for Amaji, but I believe her internet is a bit choppy, so we're going to try to give her those questions and get back to you later. So I will ask the next question, which is for Father Michael Halloran again. And the question is, why is it said that we are part of the Father? Why specifically the male gender? No insults, just curious.
Yes, well, that is an issue. It's of course, Jesus was, in his own particular culture, and for whatever reason, not just cultural, no doubt, but from his own inner experience, he referred to that ultimate reality as the Father constantly and consistently. And because of that, Christians will always do that, and we need to always to honor that, with him. But of course, as theologians point out, like Sister Elizabeth Johnson in her book, She Who Is, as God. God is beyond gender, of course, includes both and is beyond both. And that's a corrective theologically and metaphysically and spiritually that we need to keep in mind. So it'll always be a little bit delicate there, but we do need to honor both of those aspects, it seems to me.
Great, thank you. And yes, this is definitely something that comes up in a lot of spiritual traditions that allude to a father and not a mother necessarily. But one explanation I also really like is that when we're talking about a father, it's like a divine masculine energy, and the divine masculine innately is infused with the divine feminine in the Ladini Shakti, and they just feed off of each other. So sometimes when we read literally like, oh, Father, we get like, oh, why is it Father? But in a spiritual sense, it's more than just male and female.
That's a very good point. But I tend to think too that we can't say that the masculine is primordial before the feminine either. So you could just as well say the Divine Mother contains the masculine. I think anyway. Another reason, another thing that some have suggested, Father Richard Rohr, for example, that one reason we need with the divine, we speak of the Father, and that Jesus left us with the Father, was we have to wrestle with Father issues. It's a way to start necessarily resolve the Father issues that we may have in our consciousness and in our personal experience, which is an interesting side reflection, I think.
Cool. So we have one more question for you, Father Michael, and then we'll probably have to close. You have a lot of people are asking you questions. So this is from an anonymous attendee who says, I have encountered several Catholics/Christians who perceive yoga and Vedic philosophy with wariness and suspicion. How would you advise on managing this? I see a lot of coherence with Christianity in many areas, but not on the issue of reincarnation. Christianity asserts that each human being has only one earthly life and there is no rebirth into many lives.
Well, I don't think I want to tackle the last part of that with reincarnation. That would require several books and many panels and etc. But it's a fascinating issue. The main problem that I see, and I see it in some of the chat here as well, is that so many Christians, including Catholics, who should know better, but everyone should know better, but think that yoga is somehow dangerous. Well, I mean, the scriptures are dangerous. The Bible is dangerous. I mean, anything is dangerous if you approach it with the wrong consciousness or you approach it in the wrong way. Or true of yoga. But, if you're approaching it in the sense of desiring to discover God, discover reality, we would say under the grace of the Spirit, then there's nothing wrong with it. Part of the suspicion is if it's natural, which is what I'm asserting. If it's natural, that doesn't mean it's good. It means it's pagan and it's secondary, and even it may be full of demons because it's just the natural world and we're all fallen creatures and the whole universe is fallen. Okay, we really got to balance that out much better than we have in past centuries with the notion of as what they call original blessing. No, depending whatever wavelength you're on, God is resplendent in the whole of creation. Immediately accessible if you're on the same wavelength, but maybe that's the problem. People aren't on that wavelength, and if they see demons, it's because they have demons. So we really need to appreciate the fact that, as I said earlier, yoga and the chakras and all that is just natural wisdom that is there for us to be able to use to approach reality, to connect with reality, and to enjoy reality.
Amazing, thank you so much. So I'm conscious of time. I think at this stage, I'm going to ask our panelists to provide a closing statement. If you could just say in one sentence, any message you would like to leave the participants with before we end. Thanks. I'll call on Swamini Pramananda first. Amaji.
Yes, well, there is a lot to share always in this particular topic of life and living. But one thing I would like to say is life is for living one's highest truth. And the highest truth is connecting to the spirituality within, to one's spiritual self, and knowing one's divine nature. And that is the ultimate goal of life one needs to live for. And to do so, whatever it takes to change in life one's attitudes and integrate certain practices that the yoga tradition guides us through, they are wonderful tools to elevate ourselves and really be beautiful, peace-loving, peace-generating members, life form on earth, to be a contributor and not a competitor, not a consumer. Being a contributor of love, of the basics, one will eventually open one's soul to discover the unity with all life. And that is really a journey of every human being. And we are all here for coming back home to one's own godhood, one's own divinity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amaji. That reminds me of a quote from one of my teachers who says that the nature of every single soul is to love and to be loved. And that really is the source that unites all of us and grows any competition. So thank you for that very important message. Juan Pablo, are you able to give a closing statement or a closing sentence for us?
Thank you so much to everyone, to all the participants and all the panelists. I feel very honored, and I don't know, I just want to say, keep the dialogue alive. You know, dialogue, it's what makes us connect to each other, and the respect to each other. So I think, yeah, keep the dialogue, the respect, and the care for the earth, for each other, and bring and nurture those practices that nurture the care for the world, the care for the other, and the dialogue. So thank you very much to GPIW and Indica for having me here, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. That was very sweet. Father Holleran, any closing words you would like to share?
there's a parable in the gospel about where Jesus says to put out into the deep water, Peter and the fishermen, and Pope John Paul, in his message to humanity for the new millennium, said that's what we need to do: put out into the deep water, go out into the deeps. Don't be afraid. Don't yield to fear, but make the great explorations, to take the great risks to make the world a better place by connecting to everyone, not having fear of that, connecting to the divine, not having fear of that. That would be my message. Don't be afraid and put out into the deep.
I love that. Thank you so much. Finally, Professor Suhail, please share any closing sentences you would like to share with the group.
Yes, I would share with you a verse from Rumi and from lines from the Upanishad. First, the Upanishad. I am the birth of this cosmos, its dissolution also. I am he who causes, no other beside me. Upon me these worlds are held like pearls strung on a thread. And Rumi, in his inimitable words, just for the taste, I read the Persian, Ittisale be takayyuf be qiyas, hast rabbun nas raba jan nas. There is a relation without being able to ask how, without being able to compare it to anything, between the soul of man and the Lord of the soul. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the juxtaposition of the Upanishads and Rumi. It's very beautiful. So I would just like to thank everyone again for joining us today, and especially give a huge thanks to Reverend Diane Berke, who did such a beautiful job of holding space for this meeting. And of course, our distinguished panelists, I want to thank you as well. And I really want to thank Indica, of course. So if some of you were wondering, what is GPIW? GPIW is an acronym for the Global Peace Initiative of Women. We are an organization based in New York City, and we are partnering with Indica for this event. So if you want to learn more about us, you can go to gpiw.org and learn more about our work. We also have a Facebook page, the Global Peace Initiative of Women, if you search us, and we'd love to interact with you more there. And I will officially close the session and hand off the mic to Anuradha, who will make some statements about the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for doing the question and answers for this session, because it was not easy. There were just so many questions that were inspired by the sharings of our different panelists. So I would just like to make the announcements for the next day's events. So if I may request Srinivasji to kindly put the next day's program on the screen. So in the morning, we have a panel discussion, another panel discussion on mindfulness, happiness, and well-being in the workplace. And it's a great privilege for me to welcome the panelists of that particular session, because they're all colleagues from the Reiki Center of Excellence for the Science of Happiness at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Kharagpur. So we will have with us the founder and managing director of R Systems, who's also the honorary chairman of the Reiki Center, Satinder S. Reiki-ji. And Reiki-ji is the one who has actually established the center in his alma mater. So we look forward to his sharing on the concept of spirituality and awe, and what that does for people in the workplace. We then have with us Professor Manas K. Mandal, who is a distinguished visiting faculty at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and he's also an advisor at the Reiki Center. Professor Manush Mandal has had a very distinguished career, and he's a neuroscientist, basically, neuroscientist psychologist. So he'll be talking to us about the benefits of these practices from that perspective. We will also have with us Dr. Samdhu Chetri. In fact, he's somebody I met also on the GPIW platform. Samdhuji was the former executive director of the GNH Center in Bhutan, and he is presently a visiting professor at the Reiki Center. So Samdhuji has years of very vast experience with mindfulness. So he's going to give us some tips on certain mindfulness practices that can help us in our workplaces. After this, we have Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik. He's a professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and also the head of the Reiki Center presently. Professor Patnaik himself is a visual communications expert and artist, a very multi-talented personality. So he's going to talk to us about those aspects and their contribution in enhancing wellness and well-being in the workplace. So this would be our morning session tomorrow. But following that, if I can have the previous poster for the day, so that all of you who are present here can follow the events. We will have a talk on Wellness 9 by Meena Mirchandani ji, who is the chief faculty at the Ritambhara Wellness, which is also a partner organization for this particular festival. And at night, we have a very special talk by Rangan Ramakrishnan ji on the yoga of the Ramayana. Ranganji belongs to a family of illustrious speakers who do constant pravachana, and they share about the Ramayana. And so he is also the founder of the Shruti Ram Gurukula in Bangalore. So we are going to have these wonderful sessions tomorrow in the same spirit that we've had this dialogue and the rest of the festival. So with these words, I would like to come back to our panelists. So may I request all of you to please come on screen. We had a very stimulating and at the same time a deeply thought-provoking, a very profound kind of a contemplative dialogue today on this question of human unity. And very beautifully, many of you showed us how it is not just connected to our own oneness, but also to that of the creatures and everything that surrounds us. So thank you very much for that and for sharing your last messages as well. I would like to thank Reverend Diane Berke specially for having led this dialogue in a very beautiful manner and also summarized it at the end. May I request you for a final message also for our audience, with just what you have achieved in terms of your own work. We look forward maybe on another occasion to hear a lot more of your experiences and your teachings. But for now, may I request you for a message for our audience?
Thank you. A passage that I love from my own path, A Course in Miracles, says that a universal theology is impossible. We will always believe differently, but a universal experience, which is the experience of unity, of interconnectedness, of oneness and harmony, is not only possible, but necessary. And I believe that engaging in practices that allow us to tap into and become and be able to integrate that deeper experience is one of the greatest gifts we can offer to the world.
Okay.
I'm muted. You have to get conscious of that. So I'd like to maybe request Vinaya to thank the wonderful team for their sharing on behalf of Indica Yoga.
I'd just like to place on record our gratitude on behalf of Indica Yoga on behalf of Indian Yoga Association and European Union of Yoga, Ritambhara Wellness, Ritambhara Ashram, Yesvyasa Houston, and Yesvyasa Singapore. These were all our partnering organizations who have facilitated this event. And we thank each one of you for joining us this evening or this morning from different parts. We were hearing how difficult it is because of it's raining or because of electric conditions. Yet it was all possible because there was some alignment of thought at a higher level, and that made us come together on this beautiful, lovely session. So thank you very much. Indica Yoga, Indica Academy is grateful for what you have offered us today. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to end with a verse from the Rig Veda. I started with a certain Sanskrit verse, and the last hymn of the Rig Veda, it says, Sanga Chadvam Sambadadvam Sambho Manansi Janatam. It says, walk together, speak together. Sanga Chadvam Sambadadvam, speak together. Sambho Manansi Janatam, know each other's minds together. And this is how creation took place, and this is how we can, again, co-create a better world. So with these words, thank you again once more, GPIW, for making this happen, Hannah for having conducted the Q&A and the rest of it. Deep pranams to each one of you for what you have shared. Thank you.
Thank you.